Have you ever noticed how sometimes the harder you try to make something work, the worse it gets? Like you're doing everything right, you're putting in the effort, staying disciplined, trying to control every little detail, but somehow the universe just says, nah, not today. It's like trying to hold on to water with your hands. The tighter you grip, the faster it slips away. And you're left sitting there wondering, what the hell am I doing wrong? Maybe it's that relationship where you cared too much. Maybe it's that goal that you pushed for so hard that it just burned you out. Or maybe it's that feeling that no matter how much effort you put into being happy, life just keeps giving you new problems. If that sounds familiar, congratulations, you're human. Because all of us, especially in today's grind culture, are wired to believe that effort equals results. We think that if we just try harder, push more, stay focused, stay motivated, everything will fall into place. But here's the funny thing. Some of the best things in life don't come from trying harder. They come from letting go a little. That's what Taoism is all about. It's this ancient Chinese philosophy that basically says, stop fighting with life, flow with it. I know, it sounds kind of mystical, right? But it's actually super practical once you understand it. Because Taoism is not about religion, rules, or rituals. It's about learning how to live, how to move through life without constantly stressing and struggling against the current. Now, before you roll your eyes and think, oh great, another just go with the flow motivational talk, hear me out. This is not about being passive. It's not about giving up or being lazy. It's about realizing that there's a natural flow to things, and when you learn to move with it instead of against it, life stops feeling like such an uphill battle. Think about it. Have you ever had one of those days where everything just clicks? You wake up and somehow things just fall into place. Your timing's perfect, your energy's balanced, even small annoyances just roll off your back. You didn't force it, you were just in the flow. That's the state Taoists talk about. A state where life feels effortless, not because you're doing less, but because you're aligned with the way things naturally move. On the other hand, there are those days where you wake up and immediately feel behind. You're rushing, you spill your coffee, the traffic sucks, every email feels urgent, and you just can't seem to catch a break. That's when you're fighting the current. You're trying to make the river go faster by splashing harder, and you end up exhausting yourself. Taoism basically says, stop swimming upstream. Because life's current is already moving, you just need to find your place in it. Let's pause for a second and think about nature. A tree doesn't force itself to grow. It doesn't wake up every morning like, come on, I gotta get these branches going. It just grows, naturally, gradually, responding to the seasons, the sun, the rain. That's the Tao, the natural way of things. The Taoists believed that everything, you, me, the stars, the rivers, the wind, all move according to this rhythm. And the more we fight it, the more anxious, confused, and disconnected we feel. The more we align with it, the more peaceful and powerful we become. And that's the paradox of effort. The more you chase happiness, the harder it becomes to find it. The more you force success, the more it slips away. Because both happiness and success are side effects, not goals. They come naturally when you stop trying to force them. Let me give you a modern example. Have you ever tried to fall asleep really hard? You're lying there, your eyes are closed, and you keep thinking, okay, fall asleep now, come on, relax, sleep. And of course, the more you try, the more awake you become. Then, the moment you stop trying, maybe you turn over, give up, or just stop caring, you drift off. That's the Tao in action. You can't force relaxation. You can't force peace. You can only allow it. Or take creativity. Writers, artists, musicians, they all know that inspiration doesn't come when you're banging your head against the wall trying to make it happen. It shows up when you stop forcing it. When you're walking, showering, daydreaming. That's when the ideas come, like they were waiting for you to get out of your own way. That's Taoism. It's not about doing nothing, it's about not forcing anything. It's about action that feels natural, the kind that doesn't drain you because it's aligned with what's already happening. Now, I'm not saying this means you stop caring or never try again. This isn't some lazy philosophy for people who don't want to work. It's actually the opposite. Taoism teaches you how to work smarter, how to be in sync with what life is doing instead of fighting it every step of the way. You can see this everywhere in nature. Water doesn't fight the rock, it just flows around it. And over time, the water shapes the rock itself. That's power without force. That's what the Taoists call Wu Wei, effortless action. And honestly, it's a mindset we could all use a little more of. Because look around, everyone's burned out. We're all trying to optimize everything, our morning routine, our diet, our productivity, our relationships. We live in a constant state of, I'm not there yet. And even when we get what we want, we immediately start chasing the next thing. But what if life isn't something to be conquered? What if it's something to be participated in? What if peace and success aren't things you chase, but things that naturally happen when you stop resisting what's already here?
So where does this philosophy come from? What is the origins of Taoism? It started with a man who was so done with society that he literally walked away from civilization. His name was Lao Tzu, which translates to Old Master. And according to legend, he lived in China around 500 BCE, during a time when society was obsessed with structure, control, and rigid order. People believed that if you just made enough laws, enough systems, enough rules, you could make everything perfect. Sound familiar? Yeah, not much has changed in 2,500 years. Lao Tzu was working as an archivist in the royal court, basically surrounded by all the records of history, philosophy, and politics of his time. He saw patterns that others didn't. He noticed that every time humans tried to control nature, or control people, or control the future, things fell apart. Kingdoms rose and fell, dynasties came and went, and yet people never learned. At some point, Lao Tzu just had enough. He looked around and thought, you know what? I'm out. He packed up his few belongings, got on his water buffalo, and started riding west, leaving behind the city, the court, and all of civilization itself. Now here's the interesting part. As the story goes, when he reached the border, a guard recognized him. He knew this wasn't just some random old man. This was a wise scholar who had seen the world from the inside out. And the guard begged him, please, before you go, write down your wisdom. Leave something behind for the rest of us. So Lao Tzu agreed. He sat down, probably under a tree or by a river as the story goes, and wrote a short book, just around 5,000 Chinese characters. And that little book became one of the most influential spiritual texts in history, the Tao Te Ching, which translates roughly to the Book of the Way and its virtue. When he finished writing it, he handed it to the guard, smiled, and disappeared into the mountains, never to be seen again, like the ultimate Irish goodbye, except with a philosophy that would change the world. Now, whether or not that story is literally true doesn't really matter. What matters is what it represents, a rejection of the idea that life needs to be forced or controlled, and an embrace of something much deeper, the way. That's what Tao means, the way. Not your way, not my way, but the natural way of things. It's the underlying flow of the universe. And the Tao Te Ching isn't like other old books that try to tell you what to believe. It doesn't give you commandments or dogmas. It speaks in riddles, paradoxes, and simple observations, like poetry that hits you harder the older you get. One of the first lines says, "The Tao that can be spoken is not the eternal Tao." Meaning, if you can describe it, you've already missed the point. Because the Tao isn't something you can define, it's something you have to experience. That's what made Lao Tzu different. Most philosophers tried to analyze life. He wanted people to live it. Now, around the same time, there were other thinkers, like Confucius, who believed that peace and harmony came from social order, structure, and strict moral codes. Confucius was like the rules and order guy. Lao Tzu, he was the chill, let nature handle it guy. Two completely opposite approaches to life. And yet, both shaped Chinese thought for centuries. Confucianism built the framework for society, education, politics, rituals. Taoism became the heart, the reminder that underneath all the structure, there's a flow we can't control. Here's the thing. Even though Taoism started as a philosophy, it naturally evolved into a way of living. People started using its principles to guide everything, from medicine to martial arts to painting and poetry. Because at its core, Taoism isn't about believing in something, it's about being in tune with something. You can almost imagine Lao Tzu looking at modern life today and shaking his head. We've got productivity hacks, motivational podcasts, 10-step plans to inner peace, and he'd probably just say, "Stop, you're making it too complicated." For him, wisdom wasn't about knowing more, it was about unlearning the noise. He once said, "In the pursuit of knowledge, every day something is gained. In the pursuit of the Tao, every day something is dropped." And that right there is the foundation of Taoism. The idea that you don't find truth by adding more, but by letting go of what's unnecessary. Let's pause there, because that's actually a huge idea. Think about how we approach life now. We're always trying to add goals, add responsibilities, add skills, add things to do. But what if peace isn't about adding more? What if it's subtracting, removing what clutters your mind so the truth can reveal itself? That's why Lao Tzu left society. He saw how people kept chasing wealth, chasing recognition, chasing meaning, and he realized the chase was the problem. So he walked away from it all. In a way, that's the first Taoist teaching. Sometimes walking away is the most powerful thing you can do. Not out of anger, not out of apathy, but out of understanding that peace doesn't come from fixing the world. It comes from being aligned with how the world already works. And if you think about it, we all have our own walk-away moments. Moments when we realize we've been grinding so hard for something that doesn't even feel right anymore. Moments when our heart whispers, "You don't need to keep forcing this." When you hit that point, you're closer to Taoism than you think. Because Taoism isn't some exotic thing you learn about, it's something you already feel deep down. It's that quiet voice that says, you don't need to control everything. It's the calm you feel after finally letting go of something that wasn't meant for you. And that's what Lao Tzu taught. The Tao Te Ching was never meant to be followed blindly. It was meant to wake people up to what's already inside them, the wisdom of the way. So, in this first step of our journey, remember this. Taoism began not with a man trying to start a movement, but with a man who simply walked away and found peace in the simplicity of life. And that act of walking away became the spark for a philosophy that's still guiding people thousands of years later. Because at the end of the day, the world doesn't need more control. It needs more understanding.
So let's talk about the big question. What exactly is the Tao? Because if we're going to base this whole philosophy on something called the Way, it'd be nice to actually understand what that means, right? Here's the thing, and this is going to sound a little weird, the Tao can't really be explained. In fact, Lao Tzu starts his entire book, the Tao Te Ching, by saying exactly that. The Tao that can be spoken is not the eternal Tao. Translation, the moment you try to define it, you've already missed it. It's like trying to describe the taste of water.
It's everywhere, you need it to live, but the second you overthink it, it slips through your mind. Still, let's give it a shot. Not to define it, but to feel what it means. When Taoists talk about the Tao, they're talking about the natural flow of everything, the invisible force behind the universe. Not in a magical Star Wars kind of way, but more like the rhythm that everything in life follows, whether we notice it or not. Think about nature for a second. The sun rises and sets, the tides come in and go out, the seasons change. Everything in existence, from galaxies to grass, moves in cycles. No one's giving orders, no one's scheduling meetings about it, it just happens. That flow, that effortless harmony is the Tao. It's the way things move when they're allowed to move naturally. It's the rhythm of life before we try to control it. Now, if that sounds abstract, let's make it personal. Have you ever had one of those moments where you're totally present? You're not thinking about the past, you're not stressing about the future, you're just in it. Maybe you're cooking, or driving, or talking with someone, and everything just feels right. That sense of ease, that state of flow, that's the Tao moving through you. The Tao isn't something out there in the clouds, it's right here, in every breath, every heartbeat, every moment that unfolds naturally, without effort. It's like this. When you breathe in and out, you don't need to force it. You're not sitting there saying, "Okay, lungs, time to inhale, now exhale." It just happens. That's the Tao at work, the intelligence of life itself. But here's where we mess it up. We overthink it. We try to control things that are supposed to flow. We try to make people love us. We try to force outcomes. We try to make every day go according to our perfect little plan. And when life doesn't cooperate, we freak out.
Taoism is basically saying, hey, relax. Life already knows what it's doing. The Tao is like a river. You can try to fight it, swim upstream, splash around, complain that it's too strong, or you can float with it. You can trust that it'll take you where you need to go. That doesn't mean you don't swim at all. It just means you stop fighting the current. And the thing about the river is it doesn't have a goal. It doesn't think, okay, I need to reach the ocean by next Tuesday. It just flows naturally, responding to the shape of the land. Sometimes it moves fast, sometimes slow, sometimes it gets blocked. And when that happens, it simply finds another way around. That's what Taoism invites us to do. Stop forcing your path and start trusting the flow. When you understand the Tao, you start to realize that life isn't something happening to you. You're part of life happening. You're not separate from the world, you're woven into it. Now, this is where people get tripped up. They think, okay, if the Tao is everywhere, does that mean I just sit back and let life happen? Not quite. You still act, but your actions come from alignment, not control. It's like dancing with the universe. You're moving together, not trying to lead the whole time. Here's a good example. Think about surfing. You can't control the waves, right? You can't decide how tall they'll be or when they'll crash, but you can learn to ride them. You can move with their rhythm, adjust your balance, and use their energy instead of fighting it. That's living in harmony with the Tao. And when you don't, when you try to fight the wave, you wipe out. Simple as that. One of best modern interpretations of the Tao comes from Alan Watts. He said, "You and I are apertures through which the universe is looking at itself," meaning we're not separate from the flow, we are the flow. The Tao isn't some external God telling you what to do, it's the very life moving through you right now. And here's where it gets deep. If everything is part of the Tao, the good, the bad, the chaos, the calm, then nothing is truly out of place. Everything that happens is part of the way. When we stop labeling every event as good or bad, life starts to feel lighter. You start to see that the Tao is always balancing itself out. That setback you thought ruined your week might be the reason something better unfolds next month. That relationship that ended might be what makes space for something more real. The Tao has its own timing, and it's never wrong. Now, this doesn't mean you become passive or indifferent. It means you learn to trust. You start to live with curiosity instead of fear. You stop forcing outcomes and start working with reality as it is. That's why Lao Tzu says things like, "Do you want to improve the world? I don't think it can be done." He's not being pessimistic. He's saying that the world already has a built-in intelligence. Our job isn't to fix it, it's to understand it. When you understand the flow, you start to see where you actually fit in, and life becomes smoother. So what is the Tao? It's the pattern behind all patterns. It's the flow behind every event. It's what keeps galaxies spinning and grass growing, and it's what beats your heart without you even thinking about it. You can call it nature, you can call it the universe, you can call it life. Taoism doesn't care what word you use, because at the end of the day, the Tao doesn't need a name, it's already happening. So instead of asking, what is the Tao, maybe a better question is, how can I live in harmony with it? Because that's where this philosophy really starts to come alive.
All right, so we've talked about the Tao, this natural flow that runs through everything. And now we're getting to one of the most practical and honestly life-changing ideas in Taoism, Wu Wei. If you've ever read anything about Taoism, you've probably come across this phrase. It's usually translated as non-doing or effortless action. But the problem is, people hear non-doing and think it means sitting on the couch all day, eating chips, waiting for life to sort itself out. That's not it, not even close. Wu Wei isn't about doing nothing. It's about doing the right amount at the right time in the right way, without forcing. It's action that flows naturally, like water moving around a rock instead of smashing into it. Let's start with the basics. The word wu means without, and wei means effort or forced action. So together, Wu Wei means without forcing. It's when your actions are so aligned with the flow of things that they almost seem effortless, like you're not even trying, but everything just clicks. Think about the last time you were in the zone. You know that feeling, when you're totally immersed in what you're doing. Time disappears and everything just clicks. Maybe you were writing, playing a sport, drawing, or even cooking, and it just felt right. That's Wu Wei. It's that sweet spot between effort and ease, where you're not being lazy, but you're also not overthinking or overdoing. You're just being. You're doing something, but it's happening through you, not because of you. Here's a simple way to understand it. Wu Wei is like rowing with the current instead of against it. You're still moving, you're still steering, but the flow of the river is helping you. It feels natural. When you fight the current, when you push, struggle, or try to control everything, you exhaust yourself. But when you flow with it, even big challenges start to feel smoother. Now, that might sound like a nice idea, but let's make it practical. How do you actually live Wu Wei in everyday life? Well, start by noticing where you're forcing things. Think about a situation where you keep trying to control the outcome. Maybe it's a relationship, a project, or your career path. You plan, you strategize, you stress, and no matter what you do, things just won't go your way. That's resistance. And here's the Taoist perspective. If you have to force it constantly, maybe it's not the right direction. That doesn't mean you quit every time something's hard. It means you pay attention to the quality of your effort.
There's a difference between natural effort and forced effort. Natural effort feels alive, flowing, and even energizing. Forced effort feels heavy, frustrating, and exhausting. Wu Wei is about learning to tell the difference. Let's use a real example. Say you're working on a creative project, writing a book, designing something, building a business, and you hit a block. The typical modern response is push through, discipline, hustle. But Taoism would say, pause, step back,
The river might be turning here. Instead of forcing a solution, you might take a walk, rest, or do something else entirely. Then, out of nowhere, the idea hits you. That's not coincidence, that's flow. When you stop forcing, you give life the space to move through you. Here's another one, relationships. You ever notice how when you chase someone too hard, it usually pushes them away? But when you relax, when you stop trying to control the outcome, suddenly things start to align naturally. That's Wu Wei too. It's not manipulation, it's alignment. It's the energy of ease instead of desperation. It even applies to conversations. Have you ever had one of those talks where you're trying to say the right thing, impress someone, or prove a point, and it just feels awkward? Then other times, the conversation flows so easily that you lose track of time. The difference isn't in what's being said, it's in the energy behind it. Wu Wei is that natural, effortless rhythm that shows up when you stop performing and just show up authentically. And that's kind of the secret. Wu Wei works because it's honest. It's your natural intelligence showing up when your ego shuts up. Now, don't get me wrong, this doesn't mean you never make plans or take initiative. Taoism isn't about floating around waiting for life to hand you everything. It's about listening first. It's about observing before acting. The Taoists believed that the best action comes from stillness. You don't jump into things impulsively. You watch, feel, and when the moment is right, you act decisively, but effortlessly. Imagine a skilled archer. When they draw the bow, they're calm, no tension, no panic. They breathe, they wait, and then release. That release, that perfect timing, is Wu Wei. They're not forcing the shot, they're part of the process.
Here's a quote from Lao Tzu that nails it. When nothing is done, nothing is left undone. It sounds like a riddle, but it means this. When you act from a place of flow, things naturally fall into place without struggle. And you know what's crazy? You already practice Wu Wei more often than you realize. When you tie your shoes, drive home on autopilot, or catch something that's falling without even thinking, that's Wu Wei. It's the state where your mind and body are perfectly in sync, no overthinking required. The problem is, most of us have forgotten how to live like that on a bigger scale. We've been trained to believe that if we're not constantly doing something, we're failing. So we push, chase, and grind, and we end up exhausted, not enlightened. Wu Wei says, stop pushing the river, it's already flowing. Now, one of the most famous Taoist stories that captures this perfectly is about a butcher named Ding. This story comes from the Zhuangzi, another classic Taoist text. So, one day, the king asks Butcher Ding how he manages to carve oxen with such precision and ease. His movements are flawless, effortless, almost like a dance. The butcher replies, I've been cutting up oxen for 19 years. In the beginning, I saw nothing but the whole ox. After 3 years, I no longer saw the whole animal. I saw only the patterns. Now, I let my knife find its way through the natural spaces in the joints. My blade never touches bone. In other words, he's not forcing his knife through resistance. He's moving with the structure of the ox, finding the path of least resistance. That's Wu Wei in action. And that's life too. When you learn to see the patterns, when you understand how things naturally move, you stop fighting and start gliding. It doesn't mean life becomes perfect, but it becomes smoother. You conserve energy, you make better decisions, and somehow things just work out. So how do you bring Wu Wei into your life right now? Start by slowing down your reactions. When something stressful happens, don't immediately react. Take a breath. Observe what's happening instead of jumping in to fix it. Half of our stress comes from reacting too fast. Then, practice noticing where things flow easily in your life. What activities make you lose track of time? What feels light, natural, energizing? That's the Tao nudging you. Move toward that.
And finally, pay attention to resistance. When you're constantly frustrated, forcing outcomes, or feeling stuck, it's a sign you're pushing against the current. That's your cue to pause, pivot, or maybe even let go. The beauty of Wu Wei is that it doesn't ask you to change who you are. It just asks you to stop getting in your own way. When you live with Wu Wei, you start to realize that you can still achieve amazing things, but without burning out, without forcing, and without losing your peace along the way. And the best part? You stop worrying so much. Because once you trust the flow, you don't need to control everything. You just show up, stay present, and respond to what life gives you, with grace, not resistance. So, the next time something feels like an uphill battle, ask yourself, am I forcing this? And if you are, maybe the most powerful thing you can do is ease off the gas. Because the truth is, life doesn't reward force, it rewards flow. And Wu Wei is all about remembering how to live in that flow again.
So now that we've talked about flow and effortless action, let's move to another core idea in Taoism. One that's so famous, you've probably seen it 1,000 times without even realizing it's Taoist. I'm talking about Yin and Yang, that black and white circle that looks like two fish chasing each other, each holding a dot of the other's color. It's one of those symbols that everyone recognizes, but few people really understand. People usually think Yin and Yang just means good and evil, light versus dark, but that's not what it means at all. In fact, in Taoism, Yin and Yang aren't enemies, they're dance partners. So what are they really? At its simplest, Yin and Yang represent the two complementary forces that make up everything in the universe. Yin is the dark, receptive, quiet, soft energy. Yang is the bright, active, assertive, outward energy. You could say Yin is the moon and Yang is the sun. Yin is night, rest, reflection, stillness. Yang is day, action, energy, creation. But here's the important part. Neither is better than the other. They need each other. Without night, you wouldn't understand day. Without rest, action becomes burnout. Without chaos, order wouldn't mean anything. It's all about balance. That's the key word here. Now, let's think about this in real life. We live in a Yang-dominated world. Everything is about doing, achieving, competing, producing, moving faster. We're told to hustle, grind, go harder. But what happens when you stay in that state too long? You crash, you burn out, you lose joy. That's what happens when there's too much Yang and not enough Yin. You can't be on all the time. You need the quiet too, the reflection, the recovery, the being instead of doing. Taoism teaches that life is a cycle of Yin and Yang, expansion and contraction, activity and rest. You're supposed to move between the two. Just like your heartbeat alternates between beating and resting. Just like your lungs expand and contract. Everything in nature lives in this rhythm. It's only humans who try to stay on one side forever.
Let's make this really simple. You can't exhale forever. You also can't inhale forever. If you try either one, you die. So why do we try to live our lives like one long exhale of constant effort and output? That's what Taoism calls disharmony, living out of rhythm with the Tao. Yin and Yang remind us that everything has its opposite, and both are essential. You've probably heard people say, work hard, play hard. That's kind of Taoist without realizing it. It's about rhythm. But Taoism would go a little deeper and say, rest when it's time to rest, act when it's time to act. When you respect that natural cycle, you actually get more done with less effort because you're not fighting yourself. Now here's where it gets interesting. Yin and Yang also contain a piece of each other. That little black dot in the white half and the white dot in the black half
It's saying that even in the most intense moments of yang, like action or success, there's a bit of yin, stillness, reflection. And even in the most restful yin, like sleep or silence, there's a bit of yang, the pulse of life still moving. That's why nothing is ever totally one thing. A storm isn't all chaos, it's also clearing space for new growth. Silence isn't just empty, it's full of potential. In Taoism, opposites are not enemies, they're partners in an eternal dance. Let's apply this to modern life. Think about relationships. In every relationship, romantic, friendship, or family, you have moments of closeness, yin, and moments of space, yang. If you try to stay close all the time, you suffocate each other. If you stay distant all the time, you drift apart. Healthy relationships move, like breathing, between connection and independence. Or take creativity. When you're creating something, painting, writing, problem solving, you can't be in go mode constantly. There's a time to act and a time to step back and let ideas simmer. You need the quiet yin time for inspiration to surface so you can come back with strong yang energy to bring it to life. Even emotions follow yin and yang. Joy and sadness, excitement and calm, they're all part of one big emotional rhythm. Taoism doesn't tell you to avoid one side or cling to the other. It says feel both fully because both belong. And that's where most people get stuck. They want happiness without sadness, success without failure, love without vulnerability. But life doesn't work that way. You can't have one without the other because each defines the other. Like Lao Tzu said, when people see some things as beautiful, other things become ugly. When people see some things as good, other things become bad. In other words, opposites only exist because of each other. And the best part? You don't have to fix that. You just have to understand it. When you do, life feels a lot less like a war and more like a wave you can ride. Now, one more way to see yin and yang is through your own energy. Think about how you operate throughout the day. If you're constantly working, socializing, staying busy, that's yang. If you're reflecting, meditating, resting, or creating quietly, that's yin. You need both. And that's the real lesson of yin and yang, harmony. Not perfection, not control, harmony. You don't need to force balance, you just need to stay aware of it. Because the moment you notice imbalance, the Tao naturally corrects itself. That's why in Taoism, the ideal isn't to eliminate opposites, it's to dance with them. You don't fight darkness, you learn to see in it. You don't reject chaos, you learn to move through it. And when you can live that way, when you can hold both sides without breaking, you start to feel unshakable. So yin and yang aren't about choosing one side, they're about learning to live in rhythm with both. When you understand that, life stops feeling like a tug of war and starts feeling like a flow.
All right, now we're getting into one of the most beautiful and mind-bending stories in all of Taoism, Zhuangzi's butterfly dream. If Lao Tzu was the philosopher who wrote down the foundation of Taoism, then Zhuangzi, or Zhuangzi, was the storyteller who brought that philosophy to life. Where Lao Tzu gave us the ideas, Zhuangzi gave us the imagination. And honestly, his way of explaining things hits on such a deep level that it'll make you question how you see reality itself. One day, Zhuangzi fell asleep and dreamed that he was a butterfly. In the dream, he fluttered around freely, light, effortless, happy. He wasn't aware that he was Zhuangzi, the philosopher. He was just a butterfly, doing what butterflies do. Then he woke up, and when he did, he thought to himself, wait, was I Zhuangzi dreaming that I was a butterfly? Or am I now a butterfly dreaming that I'm Zhuangzi? That's it. That's the whole story. And yet those few lines have been discussed for over 2,000 years because they touch something deep about consciousness, identity, and how we understand what's real. So let's unpack it. in simple, real-life terms. What Zhuangzi is really saying is reality isn't as solid as we think it is. We like to believe that the world is fixed, that we know who we are, where we stand, what's real and what's not. But what if that's just one layer of the dream? What if the boundaries we hold between me and the world are thinner than we think? Think about dreams for a second. When you're in a dream, it feels completely real. You don't question it. You don't think, oh, this is a dream. You're just there. It's only when you wake up that you realize, oh, that wasn't real. But here's the weird part. How do you know you're not dreaming right now? How do you know this isn't another layer? Now, I'm not saying we're all living in a simulation, though, hey, even scientists debate that idea now. But the point Zhuangzi's making is timeless. Our perception of reality depends on where we're standing. And most of us are so wrapped up in one version of the dream, our job, our identity, our worries, our goals, that we forget to zoom out and see the bigger picture.
Taoism, through this story, gently shakes that up. It asks you to stop clinging so tightly to who you think you are. Because the truth is, the you that you think of as solid is actually changing all the time. Think about it. The person you were 5 years ago. Completely different dreams, opinions, maybe even a different outlook on life. You've changed, grown, shed old skins, become someone new. So, which you is the real one? The dreamer or the butterfly? Zhuangzi's point is that maybe reality isn't fixed. Maybe it's fluid. Maybe identity is something we move through, not something we own. And honestly, that's kind of freeing. Because if who you are is always shifting, then you don't have to cling to your mistakes, your past, or even your labels. You're allowed to change. You're allowed to become something new. That's very Taoist. The idea that everything, even the self, is part of the same flow. You're not separate from the Tao. You're an expression of it. Just like the butterfly, just like Zhuangzi, just like every other living thing. Here's where it gets practical. Say you're stressing about your career. You're worried about what people think, what happens if you fail, how it'll define you. But what if you remember, this is just one part of the dream? You start to relax. You start to see that who you are isn't tied to one role or one outcome. Or let's say you're going through a hard time. Pain, loss, heartbreak, the stuff that feels so heavy it consumes you. Taoism reminds you that even this is part of the dream. It's real while it's happening, but it's also temporary. And like every dream, it will shift. It'll turn into something else. That doesn't make your experience less meaningful. It makes it more precious. Because if everything is always changing, then every moment matters. Even the painful ones, even the confusing ones. There's another layer here too, one that's super relevant today. We live in a world where everyone's trying to define themselves. Online, at work, in relationships. We say things like, "This is who I am," as if it's permanent. But Taoism would say, you're more than that. You're not a fixed brand. You're not your job title, your follower count, or your past mistakes. You're the awareness behind all of that. And maybe that's what Zhuangzi really meant. The butterfly and the man weren't two separate things. They were the same consciousness, just wearing different forms. Different moments in the same infinite flow of the Tao. It's like being the sky instead of the weather. The weather changes. Sometimes it storms, sometimes it's sunny, but the sky remains. That's the Tao. That's you when you stop taking the dream so personally. And funny enough, when you stop trying to wake up all the time and just live, that's when you actually start to feel awake. You see life for what it is, not some puzzle to solve, but an experience to move through.
Now that we've explored the ideas, the flow of the Tao, the balance of Yin and Yang, and even the mystery of reality itself, let's bring it all down to something practical.
Because here's the thing, Taoism isn't meant to stay in your head. It's not some abstract philosophy you think about only when you're feeling deep at 2 a.m. It's supposed to shape the way you live every single day. Taoism isn't about adding more things to your life. It's about subtracting what's unnecessary so you can move with the flow. So let's talk about what living Taoism looks like in real, everyday situations. Let's start with something everyone can relate to: stress. We live in a world that's constantly trying to rush us. Deadlines, notifications, responsibilities, it never ends. But Taoism says nature doesn't hurry, yet everything is accomplished. Meaning, life already has a natural rhythm. You don't need to force it. When you're stressed, it's usually because you're trying to control something that's already in motion. You're trying to make the river flow faster. But if you step back and look, you'll notice the moment you relax, even a little, things start to move smoother. You start seeing solutions you couldn't see before. Because when your mind stops fighting, clarity comes naturally. Here's a small Taoist habit you can try right now. Whenever you feel overwhelmed, instead of saying, "I have to fix this," try saying, "Let me see how this unfolds." Just that one shift from control to curiosity changes your energy. You're no longer pushing, you're watching, you're allowing. That's Taoism in action. When you stop forcing your mind to find an answer, your inner sense starts to guide you. Another area where Taoism is pure gold is relationships. Because let's be honest, most of our relationship issues come from trying to control or fix other people. We want them to change, to understand us, to meet our expectations. But people, like nature, have their own flow. When you stop trying to mold them into what you want, something amazing happens. You start appreciating them as they are. Taoism teaches that love is like water, gentle but powerful. It doesn't control, it adapts. It doesn't demand, it nourishes. That's why in Taoism, the wise person isn't someone who dominates, it's someone who understands when to yield. Let's move to something that's a bit harder: failure. In the modern world, we treat failure like a crime. We fear it, hide it, and beat ourselves up for it. But Taoism sees it differently. Failure is just yin in the cycle of yin and yang. It's the pause before momentum. It's the stillness before the next move. So instead of saying, "Why did this happen to me?" try asking, "What is this teaching me?" Because every setback, every detour is still part of the flow. You might not see it now, but eventually it connects to something meaningful. Here's a real-life example. Let's say you miss an opportunity you really wanted: a job, a relationship, a goal. At first, it feels like loss. But if you zoom out and give it time, you often realize that thing would have trapped you or pushed you in a direction that wasn't right for you. The Tao was redirecting you. That's why Taoism encourages trust, not blind faith, but trust in the natural intelligence of life. The same intelligence that grows forests, forms clouds, and keeps your heart beating, it's guiding your life too. When you start trusting that, you stop panicking every time something doesn't go your way.
Let's zoom out a bit and look at why Taoism still matters today. In a world that's more chaotic, noisy, and disconnected than ever, Taoism offers a kind of quiet wisdom we desperately need. We've got endless information, but not much wisdom. We've got efficiency, but not peace. We've built technology that can do almost anything except make us feel fulfilled. And that's exactly where Taoism sneaks back into relevance, because it's not about controlling the world, it's about understanding the way the world already moves. If Lao Tzu lived today, he'd probably take one look at our world, the constant hustle, the pressure to be on 24/7, the obsession with optimization, and just shake his head. He'd probably say something like, "You people are trying so hard to be natural that you've forgotten what being natural even means." And he wouldn't be wrong. We live in what you could call a yang overload culture, all action, ambition, and acceleration. We've forgotten the yin side, the stillness, the reflection, the quiet wisdom that keeps everything in balance. So Taoism isn't some outdated spiritual relic, it's a counterbalance to the chaos of modern life. It's the reminder that we don't have to fight so hard all the time. Let's break this down. Think about social media. Everyone's performing, comparing, chasing validation. We scroll through highlight reels, measuring ourselves against illusions. Taoism would tell you, stop trying to stand out, start learning to blend in. Not in a dull, conformist way, but in a peaceful, effortless way. There's a line in the Tao Te Ching that says, the highest good is like water. Water doesn't compete, it doesn't boast, it just flows where it's needed, nourishing everything quietly. And yet, water shapes mountains over time. That's the kind of strength Taoism talks about. Quiet, humble, natural strength. Imagine if more of us lived like that. Less competition, more cooperation. Less chasing, more flowing. Less stress, more peace. And it's not about dropping out of life or deleting your apps. It's about changing how you move through life.
You can be in the modern world and still live like a Taoist. You just stop fighting the current. You start working with life instead of against it. Here's what that could look like. When your plans fall apart, instead of panicking, you look for what new door opened because of it. When someone criticizes you, instead of defending yourself, you stay centered, like water that doesn't break when a stone hits it. It just ripples and returns to stillness. When you're feeling lost, instead of forcing direction, you slow down and listen. That's Taoism in the modern life. Not about robes and temples, about living with awareness in a world addicted to distraction. Now let's talk about something personal, mental health. We live in a time where anxiety and burnout are practically normal. Everyone's trying to find peace, but they're looking for it through more effort. Meditation apps, 10-step morning routines, productivity hacks. But Taoism would say, peace isn't something you achieve, it's what's left when you stop fighting. It's not about doing more, it's about undoing. Undoing the noise, the comparison, the self-judgment. That's why so many modern thinkers, from psychologists to mindfulness teachers, are rediscovering Taoist principles without even realizing it. When you practice acceptance, presence, letting go, that's pure Taoism. Here's what's kind of wild. The more the world speeds up, the more Taoism slows you down. The more things get complicated, the more it simplifies. And the more disconnected things feel, the more it reconnects you, not to an app, but to yourself. That's the modern power of Taoism. It teaches you how to live lightly, to move through a chaotic world without letting it consume you, to work hard, but without stress, to love deeply, but without attachment, to exist in the middle of the storm and still feel calm. And the best part? You don't have to master it. There's no Taoist checklist. You just start where you are. You slow down when you remember. You let go a little faster each time. You start noticing the flow and trusting it. That's all.
The Taoist secret to effortless living. It's not about controlling, conquering, or mastering the world. It's about harmonizing with it. You see, most of us spend our lives believing that if we just work hard enough, plan carefully enough, and push relentlessly enough, everything will go our way. But Taoism gently says, hey, maybe it's not about pushing at all. Maybe life isn't this mountain we have to climb. Maybe it's a river we're meant to flow with. When you look at nature, nothing struggles to be what it is. The tree doesn't rush to grow. The ocean doesn't try to stay still. The sun doesn't overthink whether to rise tomorrow. It just does. Everything simply follows its nature. That's what the Tao means by effortless living. It's not laziness, it's alignment. When your actions match the rhythm of life, effort disappears. You're still doing things, but it's not exhausting anymore because you're not fighting yourself. Let's make this more concrete. Think about your own life. How often do you feel like you're swimming upstream, fighting circumstances, people, or even your own emotions? We all do it. We try to control every outcome, fix every problem, plan every detail. And when things don't go the way we want, we get frustrated. But Taoism says, when you stop fighting, you start seeing. When you stop trying to bend the world to your will, you start noticing the paths that were already open to you. It's like realizing the door you were pounding on was never locked. You were just pushing it the wrong way. That's the magic of alignment. It's when you stop trying to control life and start cooperating with it. We think control equals safety. We believe that if we can predict and manage everything, we'll finally be okay. But deep down, we know that's not how life works. Control is exhausting and temporary, because the truth is, the more you try to control things, the more you suffer when they change. And everything changes. That's the nature of the Tao: movement, transformation, flow. Lao Tzu said, if you realize that all things change, there is nothing you will try to hold on to. And that's freedom. That's peace. Because once you stop fighting impermanence, you start dancing with it. You stop clinging to moments and start living them. You stop chasing certainty and start trusting the flow. Think about how kids live. They're fully in the moment, playing, laughing, crying, feeling everything without needing to control it. That's what the Tao calls returning to the source. It's not about being childish, it's about remembering what it's like to live without resistance. And it's funny, the older we get, the more we forget how to do that. We get serious, stressed, strategic, and we lose that natural spontaneity. Taoism reminds us to come back to it.
So if you've been listening to all this and thinking, okay, but I'm still overthinking, still stressed, still figuring life out, good. That means you're human. And that's exactly who the Tao flows through. You don't have to force peace. You don't have to earn balance. You just have to stop getting in your own way long enough to feel it again. So here's a little exercise, something simple but powerful. Next time you catch yourself trying to force something, maybe you're pushing too hard at work, or arguing to prove a point, or stressing to make something happen, just pause. Ask yourself, what if I didn't force this right now? And then take a breath. See what happens. You might notice that things start moving on their own. Someone helps you unexpectedly. A new idea appears. Or maybe nothing happens, and you realize that's okay too. Either way, you'll start to feel lighter. That's the Tao in motion. Effortless living doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop resisting. It's about action without tension, doing what needs to be done and then letting it go. And maybe that's what we've been missing all along. Not more motivation, not more control, but more trust. Trust that life is unfolding exactly as it should. Trust that you can move with it instead of against it. Trust that the same intelligence that spins galaxies and grows trees is guiding you too. Because at the end of the day, you are not separate from the flow. You are the flow. The Tao isn't out there. It's you right here, breathing, being, becoming. So here we are, the end of the journey. Or maybe the beginning of one. We've explored the Tao, the way, through flow, balance, dreams, simplicity, and trust. And after all that, you might be realizing something kind of beautiful. Taoism was never about learning something new. It's about remembering something ancient inside you. It's that quiet sense of peace you've felt before, maybe just for a few seconds, when everything made sense, when you weren't overthinking, when life felt simple. That's the Tao whispering through you. And the more you live from that place, the more effortless life becomes. The peace doesn't come from escaping the world. It comes from understanding it, moving with it, and trusting its rhythm. Let me leave you with a few thoughts, almost like Taoist reminders that you can carry with you long after this video ends. 1. You don't need to control everything, just align with it. When things go wrong, don't panic. Ask, how can I move with this instead of against it? Because every challenge, every curve in the river has its own purpose. Sometimes the current is redirecting you towards something better. 2. Stillness isn't laziness, it's clarity. We live in a world that glorifies movement, but even the sharpest sword dulls without rest. Stillness isn't about doing nothing, it's about resetting your direction so that your next move actually matters. 3. You don't need to find the Tao, you're already part of it. You're not separate from nature, you are nature. You're not some outsider looking in, you're the Tao in human form, experiencing itself through your eyes, your breath, your heartbeat. 4. Let life be what it is. Taoism is not about perfection, it's about balance. There will be good days and bad days, joy and pain, clarity and confusion, and all of it belongs. Even the tough moments have their place in the rhythm of things. Don't rush them, don't resist them, just stay aware and let them pass when it's time. 5. Be like water. That's really what it all comes down to. Water flows without forcing. It adapts without losing its nature. It's soft but unstoppable. It takes the shape of whatever it touches, yet over time it can carve through stone. If you can move through life like that, calm, adaptable, yet quietly powerful, you've already understood the Tao. So wherever you are right now, whatever you're facing, take a deep breath. Let go of the need to have it all figured out. You don't need to. You just need to be here, fully, now. The Tao is already flowing through you, through every decision, every pause, every laugh, every breath. And when you stop trying to catch up with life, you realize you were never behind. You were always part of it. And that's it. That's the way. Simple, subtle, eternal. Thank you for walking this journey with me. May you float a little lighter, breathe a little deeper, and trust a little more in the rhythm of life. Because once you stop forcing, you finally start flowing.